me. That's great pitching technique.
I know y'all are hungry, so we'll get this knocked out short and sweet. But my topic over Special Olympics, I thought to do a different route, and I went on injury trends on athletes in the 2018 USA Games. So this is my article citation if anybody wants to read my article after this, because it's just so good. But a little background, so it's a year-round sports training and competition in a variety of Olympic type sports. The athletes, they're both children and adults with intellectual disabilities. And then the physical activity restrictions, they're just less physical active with a greater categorized as overweight or obese. And then the common characteristics of athletes, it's physical and intellectual disabilities, which challenges healthcare providers diagnosing and treating injuries, because it's a little bit more that goes into it. And it was interesting about the article because it actually says that not many investigations and articles are written about the injury trends and stuff like that, about what actually goes into it. So there's a lot more that's starting to pop up because there's so much that goes into it. And then, it's just a lot that goes into it for the healthcare people, seeing if you can return back to the sport from the injury. But yeah, your main three categories are the MSK, non-MSK, and minor. So MSK, I'm gonna butcher this word, but it's like musculoskeletal, I believe. But it's just the muscles and skeleton, including bones, joints, tendons, your major stuff like that. And then the non-MSK is just, your dental, allergic, kind of a little bit less injury related stuff. And then you have your minor, which is just icing, bandaging, massages, stretching, stuff like that to help with that injury. But yeah, in the article, their methods to find their results was in the 2018 Special Olympics Games, they had a little over 2,200 athletes participate in a total of 14 sports. But yeah, the volunteers diagnosed the injuries by an app, which was kind of unique. It talked about how they had, for each athlete, they had an ID number, and then it went to their sport, and then you just type in the ID number and it pulls up everything from sport, medical history, the injury related and stuff like that. So it had everything on file, which is nice for the amount of athletes participating. But yeah, and then you can also go through it and assign each diagnosis to a category of the injury, which are the three: MSK, non-MSK, and your minors. But yeah, overall, the analysis by the sport, the individual sports percentage of athletes injured by their rates of injuries, and this is based on the total athletes' performance in each sport. And then the team sports, the data was analyzed, I'm butchering right now, by injuries per game. So both of those sports, it was a different way of getting your final information. But overall, the results in about 13,000 sport exposures, 268 injuries happened, 476 injuries, and 383 team games. So for your team sports, there was quite a few more injuries for the percentage. Your highest percentage of injured individual sports athletes was gymnastics, which was on average 38.5% got injured in competition. And then your lowest was golf, which was 12.9. And then your highest number of injuries per team sport was softball, and that was 1.9% of each player. But yeah, here's a little bit of some information. It has your athletes injured, total injuries, and then it goes into the percentage. And then it also goes into your MSK, non-MSK, and minor, telling you about which one was injured and how severe it was. But yeah, for stand-up paddleboarding, you pretty much had no significant injuries in that, which was nice. But then gymnastics, you had 38.5% of your athletes got injured. So a lot of medical volunteer help is needed with these events. So it is interesting on what all goes into it, as well as team sports, you know, softball, which are highest percentage on injuries, just a little bit more information. And then conclusion, like I said, gymnastics was a real big hit on injuries. Nearly 1/3 of your athletes had MSK injuries, which are your more severe injuries. And then 25% of paddleboard athletes had non-MSK injuries. So not as many injuries in that sport. But yeah, the findings of the article was just the uniqueness of this athlete population. Like I said, how much goes into it, and the special care and consideration that needs to be addressed for their injuries. But yeah, for hope for future events is just to have more information on the trends of injuries and what all goes into it to help improve this sport and Special Olympics program. But that's pretty much it.
Okay, what questions do we have? Oh, we're gonna do 2 class. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Questions?
Awesome job.
I know I talked a little fast. I was getting hungry, nervous, a little bit of both.
Go to the results slide.
Okay.
That one, yeah. So my only comment, and it's not even a question, such an academic. I have more of a comment than a question. Very typical of or conferences. Somebody corrects your presentation or whatever. I'm not about to do that. I am just wondering how many of us, because there were 13,022 individual sport exposures, but some of those were repeat athletes, right? So I will swim and I will play tennis and I will run.
Well, it actually says you weren't allowed to do more. In the article, it said you weren't allowed to do more than one individual sport.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So those are individual
That's individuals,
participants.
yeah.
Okay. And how many of those, I wonder, were repeat injuries to where?
It did say that there's quite a few, because obviously with the injuries and only being able to do one sport, there was a part in it where it specifically talked about how, like, you know, you would have an athlete that would have like 2 to 3 injuries.
And those are counted in the 268. So same athlete, and they, let's say,
multiple injuries.
right, like their finger rests on their elbow, right? And so then that comes to 3 injuries.
But then it counted it as like you might have 1 MSK injury and then 2 non-MSK. So it like separated it. It didn't just go to the MSK.
So if I fell down and, you know, injure my fingers, my wrist and my elbow, and also my skin.
On that app, they would go through that app and like plug in on which one it was, and then it would print out a whole thing at the end of the Special Olympics of like the total results.
Oh, fabulous. And so individual injuries, not individual athletes, is what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Fabulous. All right, let's give 2 claps for Cash. Well done.